I like to talk about where I get the idea to read a particular book. Well, people can look back, and I read this one, this comedy, Samurai by Larry Charles, a few books back. It has to go back to the library in a couple of, well, tomorrow actually, Friday. Anyway, this one, in this, he talks about writing the screenplay, being hired by Robert Redford to write the screenplay for this book, A Walk in the Woods. And he did that and then called Robert Redford, and Robert Redford was like, said, like, what am I supposed to do with this crap or something like that was like very insulting. I don't know if he used an expletive or something. I can't remember it. And this book does not have any indexes, so you can't just look stuff up. Indexes are nice. Maybe if it was an ebook, I could. But at any rate, he wrote a screenplay for this book because Robert Redford wanted to make a movie out of it. And Robert Redford completely rejected the script. I don't know if he got paid for it or not. I don't remember the details. It's been a few books back. But anyway, I decided to read the book. Now, the movie, there is a movie, a famous movie that was made, what, 10 years ago? And anytime anybody mentions the movie, it's always how terrible the movie is. So apparently, the movie is not at all to be recommended. Don't watch the movie, apparently. So I'm not going to watch the movie, and I read the book. So I don't really care about books from movies turned into books anyway. I think the books are better than the movies almost always. I mean, I guess there are exceptions. You can put them in the comments if you want. But A Walk in the Woods, the book. So, yeah, so this is a memoir. And this is The Walk is in from like 1996. And these two guys were Bill Bryson and his buddy, who he names in the book Stephen Katz, but was really this guy named Matthew. Uh, Bill Bryson was, already, I think, a successful writer by this point, and he invited his old townie buddy, Stephen Katz, to go on this hike with him on the Appalachian Trail. For some reason, I don't remember why Bill Bryson thought that would be a good adventure to have, but so actually, the best part. All right, the movie. One of the problems with the movie is that according to a couple things I've read, which I'll include in the notes, I found this interview with this guy Matthew, who was the Stephen Katz character, and that's from a few years back, and it's a radio interview. It goes on rather long, 49 minutes, and he doesn't have all that much to say. He was kind of a regular towny guy from Des Moines, where Bill Bryson grew up. So Bill Bryson and this guy were like 44 years old when they made the movie, and I mean when they took the walk, and Robert Redford wanted to make this movie and have and Paul Newman was going to play the Stephen Katz character. So unfortunately, it took them a while to get around to the movie, and in the meantime, Paul Newman was unavailable due to death. And so ended up being Nick Nolte in the movie, and in the movie it took too long to make the movie because at that point Robert Redford was 79 years old. I don't know how old Nick Nolte was, but Robert Redford was 79 years old, and the character in the movie is only 44. So, I mean, in the book it's only 44. So, anyway. So that makes a lot of things kind of not work because, it's a little harder to hike a mountain trail, the Appalachian Trail, to be specific, when you're 79 as opposed to 44. Of course, due to fitness and all that stuff, all these things relative to change the picture. Yeah, it's not impossible, but it's generally you have to be kind of fit to do it, or younger and fit to do it, but older people can do it. A good thing about the book is that he does give a lot of information about the Long Trail, which or the Appalachian Trail. I said the Long Trail because that's the one I hiked on mostly. Because I have a backpacking past. I was quite interested in all this stuff in my youth, like, when I was 20 years old or whatever. And so, yeah, there's a book called The Complete Walker, I think it was called. He talks about some other, I don't think he talks about that one. But yeah, I kind of got all interested in that kind of stuff, and I was interested in woods anyway. And in high school, I got interested in Henry David Thoreau. I got, really, I thought Thoreau was just so great. It was sort of this kind of a hippie thing, and I was sort of thought, yeah, I never really got moving back to the land, but I lived in a little town up state. And anyway, I did do a good deal of backpacking. I walked over half the state of Vermont on the Long Trail and the Appalachian Trail, which they go together through up through most of the state, or half the state, and then the Appalachian Trails turns off, and the Long Trail continues up to Canada. So over half of the state of Vermont, I have walked. The first trip, was very, I don't know, early 70s. Okay, and I was with my girlfriend at the time, and Anne. And Anne and I walked. We were on the Long Trail for like a month, starting in Massachusetts border, and walking up from there. And walk a couple days, and there's shelters to stay in, three-sided shelters to stay in. And then we'd hitchhike into a town or something, and get, and this is in the happy days of the 1970, when people would pick up hitchhikers and stuff like that. So it was a pretty cool thing, and I really liked doing it. And I had a couple. Then, like a year or so later, I went by myself and walked another uh, leg of it beyond where I'd stopped with Anne. When I'd stopped with Anne, we got off the trail and went to a town called Middlebury and got an apartment and lived there over the winter. So, and then when I got off the trail up in the second time, I was with this guy, Dan, who I met on the trail, who was kind of a weird guy. And then we moved to Burlington, and I lived in Burlington for a little while in a trailer, and met a guy that sold us some acid and all that stuff, and it was kind of wacky, and had some really great acid up there. From this guy that was on the road in this truck. This is the early these 70s days. So that's when I had my 60s. So so I had this experience of walking it. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to read the book, and it does provide a lot of information about the Long Trail and walking the Long Trail. Oh, the one thing about Redford, about show the poster for the movie, and look how fake he looks, and all younged up for the movie poster. But once again, everybody says the movie was terrible. Like, any mention the movie, don't watch the movie. So I won't watch the damn movie. So yeah, so a lot of it is about it starts out with a lot of the planning to go on the trail, the history of the trail, a lot of stuff about scary animals and things, which is kind of just I found that a bit tedious. The bear part, so there's a bear on the cover. He never saw a bear, okay? So they saw a moose. They should have put a moose on the cover. That they saw a moose in Maine, but they didn't see any like these horrible wild predator animals or anything like that, or black bears. There's different between black bears and grizzly bears and stuff like that. So the the uh, the bears in these trails are not particularly aggressive. They like to steal people's food. That's about it. It talks about hanging the food from trees and stuff like that, so the critters can't get to it. And we never did anything like that. We just had their backpacks in the shelter with us. We didn't have tents either. These guys have tents and all this kind of gear. We didn't have tents and or stoves or any of that kind of stuff. We just made a fire, or if we didn't make a fire, we just ate whatever we had that was dry or could just be eaten. This is another thing about the food. These two guys are real boys, are real male. So neither of them knows how to cook anything but noodles. I mean, it's like you can't learn how to cook anything. So they're subsisting on candy bars and Snickers basically is what they call them. And I've never liked Snickers. I was more of a Milky Way myself. But so that's kind of what they, and there's stuff about him. The Katz character is more out of weight or more heavy, and he has a harder time doing the climb. So there's two times in the book where he dumps all the food, like he's behind Bryson somewhere, and then he finally shows up, and well, what's going on? Oh, I threw a bunch of stuff out because it was too heavy. Like all this food and water he throws away, and stuff like that. And it's just kind of dumb. They're kind of like jerky boys still in a certain way, and that's now Bill Bryson is a nepo baby in a certain sense. Not maybe particularly high end nepo baby. He exceeded his father. I think his father and the mother, according to one of the interviews I heard, or the interview with this guy Matt. Um, Both his father and mother were journalists on the Des Moines paper, when whatever the Des Moines paper is in Des Moines, Iowa, and so and a sports writer. So that seems we don't have any background for Matthew Katz here. The Stephen Katz, Matthew Angular, or whatever his name is, character, because who's dead now, by the way. He died in 2023. So he's died at age 71 in 2023. The guy that played Stephen Katz was based on. So yeah, so clearly Bryson is the dom here. He's the big successful one. And I could see that this is all the whole thing of their relationship, or I have that feeling, or I have that judgment of Bryson. In that, he was kind of this nepo baby, and I imagined them. I didn't read his memoir about his childhood years and whatever, which apparently the Stephen Katz character is quite a bit in that one as well. Um, but it's like, okay, so your dad's the journalist, and there's a couple of boys, and so they probably got you into games and meeting the, if you're hanging out with Bill Bryson, you could probably get his dad, go with his dad, or Bill and his dad, and meet the players, and all that kind of stuff. Although there's no really sports talk in this book at all, and Matthew in the interview doesn't talk about sports. He talks about reggae. He was a reggae DJ. None of this stuff is appearing in the book, or like reefer or anything like that. Um, we are told that the Stephen Katz character has been alcoholic and is reformed alcoholic. So he on the first leg of the trip, they go on a trip for a while in the South, and then they stop, and then Bryson has something to do. So very early in the season, they start out in March. They're thinking they're going to go end to end. They're going to go the whole 2,000, whatever, 300 miles of the long trail from Georgia to Maine. But they go, no, no, this is not going to. They figure out it's not going to happen after they understand how hard it actually is, and so they get off the trail, and as I say, they start in March, so there's like snowstorms. So it's like no leaves on the trees and snowstorms and stuff like that, and oh, then it's March, then it's like spring day, and it got a little better, and but they started way too early. And it's cold, to even down in Georgia, they're starting way early with this intention of going all the way to Maine when they never do. So that breaks up. Stephen Katz goes back to Des Moines, and Bryson does a bunch of other hikes. He's living in Hanover, New Hampshire. So he takes his car and goes to Delaware Water Gap. So we hear all this stuff about the Delaware Water Gap and certain of the hikes in Vermont and things like that. So as I said, I like the background stuff about the Appalachian Trail and all that stuff the best about the book. Oh, I want to. There was, it's supposedly humorous. Well, I'm going to share on the screen here a joke that is an indication of the style of humor with these dudes. Well, they were 44 then in 1996. I guess this is before Me Too or whatever. When people say that, like, oh, everything's changed and sexuality, attitudes change and all that, and well, whatever. Anyway, there's this joke, and you can read the joke off the screen. I'm not going to recite it for you. So that's what is in the book. So, yeah, it was a pretty good book. I read it very quickly. It's not that short. It's over 300. Well, it's almost 400 pages. Yeah. So yeah, I banged right through it, and I don't know if I'll read any other Bill Bryson books. It's a little bit more. I don't know. He's kind of like it's a little middle class for my taste in some sort of way. I don't know, or I don't know. A little too something a little too mainstream or something about. Or maybe it's a bad judgment. I don't know. Maybe I should listen to an interview with the guy and get a taste of what he's all about. Was there anything else I wanted to say about this thing here? Oh, there's the alcoholism bit. With the joke and a lot of like attitudes about women come out in the book. He talks about Bryce talks of his wife a lot. Like the wife is going to come pick him up and drive him around and stuff. But I don't think he ever mentioned her name. They talk about fat people and fat women and stuff, and a certain attitude toward women that I don't know. It just seemed kind of too old school or something. I don't know, but so yeah, he Stephen Katz is portrayed as this alcoholic guy, and so when they go for the next leg. And he's completely working class. Like in the interview, he says, when they got off the trail, he didn't have a place to live. He went back to Des Moines and went with lived with his mom, where Bill Bryson had his fancy house in Hanover, New Hampshire, with the wife and so on and so forth and the kids. So no, so Stephen Katz, he's not in this level of life at all. He ends up going back and living with his mother, and then he gets his job, construction or something, building houses. In the interview, he said there was a big boom there going on. So he gets this job building houses, and sooner or later, the guys are, he's been sober for a while, apparently. So the guys are going out for beers afterwards, and finally he goes out to the bar with them, and this tells a story in the book. I don't know if it's the real story, but this is the book. The Stephen Katz story in the book is that he goes out to the bar then one time with the guys and has a Coke and sits with them, and then ultimately he starts drinking again. So when he shows up for the second leg of the trip, which they intend to walk through Maine in this really difficult trail, he's been drinking and not and still not in good shape, and or lost what he had from the other trip as far as being fit. And so there's a little talks about that a little. He wants to pick up a six pack at one point. And that's how it's revealed that he's been drinking again, and so that's that part of it. So yeah, okay. A walk in the woods. It was pretty good, and so I guess that's all I got to say about it. It's probably enough. So like and subscribe. I could really use a few more subscribers, because if I have a certain number of subscribers, I get more like opportunity for the books to move further. And if you watch this video, please subscribe, because a lot of my other videos don't get very many views because of the political attitudes in them. I think are something to Google Alphabet YouTube do not wish to support. So